The year is 1715. The Caribbean Sea glimmers under the merciless sun, but you see no beauty in it. Your hands are calloused, your stomach gnaws with hunger, and the smell of rum mixed with human sweat permeates every fiber of your being. You are a pirate in the golden age of piracy, but forget everything the movies taught you. This is the real story of what it was like to live as an outlaw on the most dangerous seas in the world. You wake to the violent rocking of the ship cutting across your back like whiplashes. The hold where you sleep reeks of urine, vomit, and rotting flesh. Your clothes, the same ones for 3 weeks, have stuck to your skin like a second layer of filth. You try to stand, but your head explodes in pain, the result of the cheap rum you drank yesterday to forget the hunger. Above, you hear the bosun's shouts ordering everyone up to the deck. You know what this means, another ship on the horizon. Your hand instinctively searches for the pistol at your belt, but it's been empty for days. Ammunition is a luxury few can afford here. You climb the rotting wooden ladder, feeling splinters dig into your already wounded hands. The sunlight blinds you momentarily, but soon your eyes adjust to the brutal reality of the deck. 40 dirty, desperate men, some with open wounds that never heal properly. The smell is worse up here, a mixture of tar, dried blood, and death. Captain Teach, known as Blackbeard, stands at the bow with his torn tricorn hat and beard braided with red ribbons. He's not the romantic figure of tales. His eyes are small and cruel, his teeth rotten, and his long nails are always dirty with blood, his own and others. When he smiles, you feel a chill run down your spine. That Spanish galleon there, he points to a spot on the horizon you can barely distinguish, is loaded with gold from Peru. But don't fool yourselves, lads. They have cannons and won't hesitate to send us to the bottom of the sea. You look around and see fear in your companions' eyes. Many don't even know how to swim. You learned as a child in Portsmouth before life threw you here. But even so, your chances of surviving a naval battle are minimal. The salt water of the Caribbean forgives no one. Your mind wanders to how you got here. It wasn't choice, as many think. It was pure desperation. Life on dry land had become impossible. No work, no money, no prospects. Forced recruitment into the Royal Navy was a constant reality in all English ports. At least here, you had a chance, however small, of getting rich. But reality is very different from dreams. In the last 6 months aboard the Queen Anne's Revenge, you've seen more death and suffering than in your entire previous life. There's no honor among pirates, only survival. The code of conduct some speak of is a cruel joke. When food runs out, men turn on each other like wild animals. You remember young Timothy, a boy of only 15, who joined the crew full of dreams of adventure. In the second week, he contracted scurvy. His teeth began to fall out, his gums bled constantly, and sores appeared all over his body. No one had lime or any fresh fruit to help him. He died in agony one morning, and his body was thrown overboard without any ceremony. The sharks that have been following the ship for weeks had a feast that day. The wind changes direction and brings with it the familiar smell of the open sea mixed with something more sinister, the sweet, sickening odor of decomposing human flesh. 3 days ago, during an argument about dividing the last loot, 2 men killed each other with knives. Their bodies are still tied to the mainmast as a warning to others. The seagulls have already plucked out their eyes. You close yours and try to remember what life was like before all this. Your mother making bread on a Sunday morning, the smell of cinnamon and honey filling the small kitchen. Your father coming home from work at the port, tired but smiling when he saw you. This seems to have happened in another life, to another person. The man you were no longer exists. A sharp scream cuts through your thoughts. The lookout at the top of the mast has spotted sails on the horizon. It's not just one ship, there are 3, and by the colors flying, they're Spanish warships. Your mouth goes dry instantly. You've seen what happens when pirates are captured by the Spanish. If you're lucky, you'll be hanged quickly. If not, you'll be tortured for days until you beg for death. The war drum begins to sound, a funeral rhythm that echoes in your chest. You grab one of the rusty swords from the deck, feeling its inadequate weight in your hand. It's not a quality blade. It's a poorly forged piece of iron that will probably break on the first strong blow, but it's all you have between life and death. Beside you, a middle-aged man named Jenkins is praying quietly. His hands tremble as he holds a rough wooden crucifix. You've never seen him so terrified. Jenkins was once a soldier, fought in 3 different wars, but something in his eyes says he knows that this time there will be no escape. the Queen Anne's Revenge begins to accelerate, its sails filling with favorable wind, the noise of ropes being adjusted, men running across the deck, cannons being prepared, creates a symphony of chaos you know well. It's the sound of death approaching, and you don't know if you'll be on the side of the living when the sun sets today. You are living at the height of the golden age of piracy, a period that began around 1650 and will reach its peak between 1715 and 1725. But to understand how you got here, you need to know the forces that shaped this violent and desperate world. The Caribbean isn't just a tropical paradise, it's the nerve center of the greatest flow of wealth the world has ever seen. Spanish galleons, loaded with gold and silver from the mines of Peru and Mexico, regularly cross these waters, transporting fortunes that could feed entire countries. Each ship represents years of indigenous slave labor in the freezing mountains of the Andes, where thousands die extracting the wealth that fills Madrid's coffers. The European powers, Spain, England, France, Holland, are in constant war for control of these treasures. Officially, their countries sign peace treaties. In practice, they authorize privateers to attack enemy ships, creating a legal gray area where piracy flourishes. You carry a forged letter of marque that theoretically protects you from the gallows, but in reality, it's nothing more than worthless paper when you're being tried by a Spanish tribunal. Life on dry land for men like you is brutally limited. In England, the Industrial Revolution hasn't arrived yet, and rural work barely pays enough to survive. In port cities, impressment, forced recruitment into the Royal Navy is a constant threat. Groups of soldiers roam taverns and streets, capturing any young, healthy man to serve for years on warships where discipline is maintained through public floggings and summary executions. In the American colonies, the situation is no better. Most colonists live in extreme poverty, working tobacco and sugar plantations under the scorching sun. Landowners, rich and powerful, control local politics and keep poor white workers in conditions only marginally better than slavery. For many, piracy represents the only real chance of social mobility. The pirate code of conduct, which some romanticize today, was born from the practical need to maintain order among desperate men. Aboard your ship, each crew member has the right to vote on important decisions, something unthinkable in the hierarchical society of the time. The captain is elected and can be deposed if he doesn't demonstrate competence. Those wounded in battle receive specific compensation: 600 pieces of 8 for losing a leg, 100 for an eye, 400 for a hand. But don't be fooled about pirate democracy. The punishments for breaking the code are savage. Those who steal from a companion have their ears and nose cut off and are abandoned on a deserted island. Those who desert in battle are tied to the ship's hull and left to drown slowly. Violence isn't just accepted, it's essential to maintain discipline among men who have nothing to lose. The food aboard is always scarce and of terrible quality. Your basic diet consists of salted meat full of worms, hard biscuits infested with insects, and stagnant water that smells like rotten eggs. Fresh fruits are extremely rare, which is why scurvy kills more pirates than naval battles. Your teeth are beginning to loosen, your gums bleed when you chew, and purple spots appear on your skin without explanation. Rum isn't just a drink, it's medicine, currency, and the only escape from brutal reality. Each man receives a daily ration that helps sterilize the rotten water and anesthetize constant pain, but the cheap alcohol burns your throat like acid and leaves you even more dehydrated under the tropical sun. You've seen men go blind from drinking rum distilled with lead. Diseases are your deadliest enemies. Yellow fever, malaria, dysentery, syphilis all circulate freely among the crew. There are no real doctors aboard, only barbers who perform amputations with carpenter's saws and treat wounds with salt water and dirty rags. The mortality rate among pirates is 3 times higher than in the general population. Pirate ships are rarely built for this purpose. The Queen Anne's Revenge was originally a French slave ship called La Concorde, captured and modified by Blackbeard. The holds where you sleep still carry the chains and shackles used to transport African slaves. The smell of human suffering is impregnated in the wood, a constant reminder that this ship was built to cause pain. Nassau, in the Bahamas, is your unofficial base of operations, a pirate city where conventional laws don't exist. Prostitutes, traffickers, fences, and assassins coexist openly. It's there that you sell your loot and quickly spend all the money on drink and women, because there's no guarantee you'll be alive next week. The average life expectancy of an active pirate is 2 years. The women in your life are few and always temporary. Anne, Bonnie, and Mary Ridd are famous exceptions, but most women you encounter are prostitutes in ports or occasional captives who are quickly sold or freed. The pirate code prohibits rape under penalty of death, but this rule is often ignored when no one is watching. You carry weapons constantly, a flintlock pistol that takes minutes to reload, sword of dubious quality, and a sailor's knife that serves both to cut rope and cut throats, but ammunition is expensive and scarce. In most battles, you fight hand to hand with boarding axes and cutlasses, where luck counts more than skill. The first sign that your pirate life is about to change drastically comes on an apparently ordinary morning in Nassau. You wake up in the sand of the beach with the sun already high, burning your skin, dried by salt and last night's rum. Beside you, an empty bottle and the remains of an extinguished fire are the only traces of the party that celebrated the last successful raid. But when you stand up, staggering, you notice something is different. The port, normally bustling with pirates, loading stolen goods, and negotiating with fences, is strangely silent. The rum vendors who never closed their stalls have simply disappeared. Even the prostitutes who always wandered the beach hunting for drunk clients have vanished like smoke. You walk to Sal Jenkins' Tavern, the only place in Nassau that serves hot coffee in the morning, but the door is locked and a board nailed to the entrance bears a message scrawled with charcoal: all gone. Good luck. Your stomach, already growling with hunger, now twists with anxiety. Something very serious is happening. That's when you see Thomas, one of Captain Vane's crew members, running toward you with panic-wide eyes. He's shirtless, his arms covered with scratches, as if he'd run through thick jungle. When he reaches you, he's too breathless to speak properly. They're coming, he manages to whisper between heavy breaths. Rogers, the governor, with 20 warships, fleet, maybe more, and they have orders from the king to finish us all. Woods, Rogers, you know this name, and it freezes your blood. A former privateer turned pirate hunter, appointed governor of the Bahamas with a specific mission: eradicate piracy from the Caribbean using any necessary method. They say he offers pardons to those who surrender, but you know stories of men who accepted his clemency. Most ended up hanged anyway. After revealing the location of hidden treasures, speaking hurriedly, Blackbeard already left, took the Queen Anne's revenge, and disappeared over the horizon before dawn. Vane fled too. Calico Jack is trying to gather the men who remained, but it's few people. Most have already deserted. You feel your world crumbling. Blackbeard abandoned you after months faithfully serving his crew, risking your life in dozens of battles, sharing the little you earned with wounded companions. He simply fled in the dead of night like a coward. The betrayal burns in your chest more than any rum, but anger quickly gives way to practical fear. Without a captain, without a ship, without an organized crew, you are completely vulnerable. Rogers won't distinguish between famous captains and simple pirate sailors. To him, all deserve the same rope. You run to the port area where smaller boats are anchored, hoping to find some vessel that can get you out of there. But most have already left or were deliberately holed and sunk by pirates who didn't want to leave resources for enemies. Only 2 or 3 boats remain seaworthy, and at least 20 desperate men are fighting over each one. A fight has already started near a fishing sloop. You recognize some of those involved: sailors from Vane's and Rackham's crews, men with whom you shared bottles and battles. Now they attack each other with knives and stones, completely wild in their desperation to escape. Blood already stains the clear sand of the beach. You move away from the confusion and try to think clearly. Escaping by sea is impossible now. There aren't enough vessels, and Roger's fleet probably already controls the main escape routes. Surrendering is slow suicide. Only one option remains: disappear into the thick jungle of the island's interior and wait for the storm to pass. But you're not prepared to survive alone in a tropical forest. Your skills are all naval. You know how to navigate by stars, handle sails, fireballs, fire cannons. On dry land, especially in a jungle full of venomous snakes, deadly insects, and without reliable sources of drinking water, your chances of survival are minimal. That's when you hear a familiar voice calling your name. Mary Reed, one of Nassau's few female pirates, is waving at you from behind a palm tree. She seems to have spent the night hiding because her clothes are dirty with earth and dry leaves. Mary has always been smarter than most men in your profession. Listen well, she says when you approach, constantly looking over her shoulder. Rogers offered royal pardon to those who surrender by noon, but it's a trap. My contacts at the fort told me he already has a list with all our names. Pardon or not, we're all marked to die. She points to an almost invisible trail that disappears into the thick jungle. I know a safe place in the interior, a village of runaway ex-slaves who have no love for the English. They can hide us for a few weeks until we find a way off the island. You hesitate. Trusting Mary means abandoning any chance of reuniting with your old crewmates. It means admitting that your pirate life is definitively over. But looking at the chaos in the port, at men killing each other for a place in a leaky boat, you realize this life had already ended anyway. We have to leave now, Mary insists, already starting to walk down the trail. In an hour, this beach will be full of English soldiers, and they have orders to shoot first and ask questions later. You take one last look at the sea, where you spent the best and worst moments of your adult life. There on the horizon, you swear you can see Roger's fleet, sails approaching like storm clouds. There's no more choice. You follow Mary into the jungle, leaving behind the only life you've known in recent years. The first steps on the trail are the hardest. Every moving leaf could hide a snake. Every sound could be an English soldier. You have no food, little water, and no idea how to survive away from the sea. But for the first time in months, you don't hear the sound of cannons being prepared or the screams of dying men. The silence of the jungle is almost deafening after the constant noise of pirate life, and in that silence, you begin to understand that your greatest battle is yet to come, the fight to become a different person in a world that no longer has room for who you were. 3 days in the jungle, and you already understand why most pirates prefer to die at sea rather than try to survive on dry land. Your boots, made for slippery wooden decks, fall apart against sharp rocks and intertwined roots. Your feet are raw, bleeding through holes in the rotted leather. Each step is torture, but stopping means dying. Mary walks ahead of you with a confidence you envy. She grew up on London streets before becoming a pirate, and her urban survival skills translated surprisingly well to the jungle. She knows which fruits can be eaten without causing violent vomiting, recognizes sounds that indicate running water nearby, and most importantly, can move almost silently through dense vegetation. You, on the other hand, make noise like a wounded boar. Branches break under your feet, dry leaves pop like small fireworks, and you constantly get tangled in vines that seem to have a life of their own. Your heavy breathing echoes among the trees, and you're sure any English soldier within miles can hear your approach. On the first night, you took shelter in a damp cave that smelled of dead bats. You couldn't sleep. Every sound was a possible enemy approaching. When you finally dozed off, you dreamed of the Queen Anne's revenge deck swaying gently under your feet. You woke up missing even the nauseating smell of the overcrowded hold. Thirst is worse than hunger. The water from jungle streams has a strange metallic taste and leaves your stomach churning, but it's better than dying of dehydration. Mary showed you how to filter water through clean leaves and sand, but even so, you feel like you're drinking liquid mud. Your gums, already weakened by scurvy, began bleeding more intensely. On the second day, you found evidence that you weren't alone in the jungle. Military boot prints in the soft mud of a secondary trail, still fresh enough to have dewdrops on the edges. Mary examined the marks with expert care. At least 6 men, she whispered, tracing the outlines with her finger, heavily armed, judging by how deep the boots sink, and they're following the same direction as us. You immediately changed route, abandoning the main trail to plunge into an even denser area of the jungle. But this meant cutting through vegetation that seemed to have thorns on every leaf. Your clothes, already tattered, were reduced to bloody rags. Your arms and legs are covered with scratches that quickly become infected in the humid heat. It's on the 3rd morning that you finally hear the voices, English, authoritative, too close. You're resting near a small stream when the sounds reach you through the foliage. Mary immediately pulls you behind a fallen trunk trunk, putting her finger to her lips in an unnecessary gesture. You're already petrified with fear. Tracks disappear right here, says a voice with a London accent. But they can't have gone far. Pirates don't know how to survive in the jungle. Orders are orders, Sergeant, replies another voice, younger. Rogers wants them all dead or alive, preferably dead. Saves rope. Cruel laughter echoes among the trees. You feel cold sweat running down your back, despite the suffocating heat. These aren't capture patrols. They're execution squads. Rogers isn't interested in trials or pardons. He wants to exterminate all Nassau pirates, once and for all. Mary is tense as a spring beside you, her hand resting on the handle of the knife she carries at her belt. You know she's capable of killing silently, if necessary. You've seen her do it during boardings, but against 6 soldiers armed with muskets, even her skills would be useless. The voices are getting closer. You can hear branches breaking under military boots, the metallic clink of weapons and equipment. Your heart pounds so hard you're afraid they might hear it. Mary signals for you to crawl backward, away from the stream, but every movement seems to produce an unbearable amount of noise. Check those bushes over there, orders the sergeant's voice. And remember, Rogers wants proof. Bring back their heads if you have to. A twig snaps under your knee as you try to move. The sound seems to echo like a gunshot in the jungle silence. Both you and Mary freeze completely, not even daring to breathe. The voices stop abruptly. Did you hear that? Asks one of the soldiers. Probably just an animal, replies another. This jungle is full of them, but you hear footsteps approaching your position. Slow, careful, predatory. Mary draws her knife silently, and you fumble for your own blade, your hands shaking so much you almost drop it. The footsteps are now less than 20 yards away. That's when salvation comes from an unexpected source. A howler monkey in the canopy above lets out one of its characteristic screams, a sound so loud and terrifying that it would wake the dead. The soldiers immediately tense up. Christ, exclaims one of them. What the hell was that? Just monkeys, you idiots, says the sergeant, but even his voice carries a note of nervousness. But they're getting agitated. Probably means there's a storm coming. We should head back to base camp. What about the pirates? Asks the younger voice. They're dead already, or they will be soon. No one survives 3 days in this jungle without proper supplies. Let the snakes and disease do our work for us. The footsteps begin to recede, but you and Mary remain motionless for what feels like hours. Only when the jungle returns to its normal sounds of insects and birds do you dare to move. Mary is pale, something you've never seen before. Even she, with all her experience and courage, was terrified. We can't stay here, she whispers. They'll be back with more men and dogs. We need to reach the maroon village today, or we're dead. But as you prepare to continue the journey, you realize the real scope of your situation. You're not just running from soldiers. You're running from your entire past life. Every skill you've learned, every friendship you've made, every identity you've built as a pirate is now worthless. You're starting over as a completely different person, and you're not even sure who that person is supposed to be. The jungle stretches endlessly ahead, full of dangers you don't understand and challenges you're not prepared for. Behind you, the life you knew is burning to ashes, and somewhere in between, you're trying to figure out how to simply survive long enough to discover what comes next. The maroon village appears like a mirage, just as your legs are about to give out completely. After 4 days of stumbling through the jungle, your body is a map of pain. Infected cuts cover your arms and legs. Your feet are swollen masses of blisters and blood, and dehydration has left your tongue thick and useless in your mouth. Mary looks only slightly better, though her experience shows in her measured steps and controlled breathing. The village is smaller than you imagined, perhaps 20 huts made of palm fronds and mud arranged in a rough circle around a central fire pit that hasn't been lit in days. But it's the silence that strikes you first. No children playing, no women grinding corn, no men sharpening tools. The place feels abandoned, though you can see fresh footprints in the mud and clothes hanging on lines between the huts. Something's wrong, Mary whispers, her hand moving instinctively to her knife. This place should be alive with people. That's when you hear it, the sound that's haunted your nightmares for months. The rhythmic splash of oars cutting through water, moving in perfect synchronization. Naval longboats, multiple ones, approaching fast from the direction of the coast. Your blood turns to ice. Somehow, Roger's men have found the village. Whether through torture, betrayal, or simple systematic searching, they've tracked you here, and now you're trapped. Jungle behind you, soldiers approaching from the water, and nowhere left to run. Mary grabs your arm and pulls you toward the largest hut at the village village center. Maybe there's a back way out, she hisses. But even as she says it, you both know it's hopeless. The sound of the oars is getting closer, and you can hear voices now, English accents shouting orders, the metallic clink of weapons being readied. Inside the hut, you find evidence of hasty evacuation. Cooking pots still warm, hammocks cut down and thrown aside, personal belongings scattered on the dirt floor. The Maroons knew the soldiers were coming and fled, probably hours ago. They saved themselves, but left you and Mary to face the trap alone. Through gaps in the palm frond walls, you see the first longboat beach itself on the muddy shore. 6 soldiers jump out, their red coats bright as blood in the jungle gloom. They move with military precision, fanning out to surround the village, while their sergeant studies the ground for tracks. Fresh prints leading right here, the sergeant calls out, his voice carrying clearly across the small clearing. 2 people, both wearing sea boots. Our pirates, gentlemen. Mary presses against the wall beside you, her breathing shallow and controlled. In her eyes, you see something you've never witnessed before. Not fear, exactly, but a cold calculation of impossibly bad odds. She's killed men in ship-to-ship combat, survived storms that sent better sailors to the bottom, but this is different. This is execution, pure and simple. More boats arrive. You count at least 20 soldiers now, all armed with muskets, bayonets, and cutlasses. They spread out in a perfect perimeter around the village, blocking every possible escape route. These aren't the clumsy foot soldiers you might have encountered in port towns. These are professional Marines, trained specifically for operations like this. "We know you're here," shouts a voice you recognize with a chill. Captain Jonathan Barnett, Roger's most trusted officer and a former pirate hunter who sent dozens of men to the gallows. "Come out now with your hands visible, and I give you my word you'll live to see trial." Mary snorts quietly at the word trial. You both know what Barnett's trials look like. Swift, one-sided affairs that always end the same way. But what choice do you have? Stay hidden and be dragged out like cornered rats, or walk out with whatever dignity you can muster? The decision is made for you when a soldier appears at the hut's entrance, his musket leveled at your chest. He's young, maybe 18, with nervous eyes and hands that shake slightly as he holds his weapon. But the distance is less than 10 feet. Even shaking hands couldn't miss at this range. "Found them, sir," he calls out, never taking his eyes off you and Mary. 2 pirates, just as you said. More soldiers converge on the hut, their weapons all pointed inward. You raise your hands slowly, feeling Mary do the same beside you. As you step out into the fading daylight, you're struck by how mundane the moment feels. After months of dramatic battles and life or death struggles, your capture happens quietly, with barely a word spoken. Barnett approaches, his uniform immaculate despite the jungle march. He's older than you expected, with gray threading through his hair and scars that speak of real combat experience. When he looks at you, his expression isn't cruel or triumphant, just tired, like a man completing an unpleasant but necessary job. "Mary Red," he says, and you, recognizing
He turns
her
to you.
immediately, must be the sailor from Teach's crew that's been causing us so much trouble. He doesn't wait for confirmation. "Strip them of weapons and bind their hands. We'll camp here tonight and start back to Nassau at first light. The ropes around your wrists are tied tight enough to cut off circulation." A soldier searches you roughly, removing your knife, a few coins, and a small compass you've carried since your first days at sea. Each item feels like a piece of your identity being stripped away. As night falls, you and Mary are tied to a palm tree at the village center, while the soldiers make camp around you. They light a fire and cook salt pork, the smell making your empty stomach cramp with hunger, but none is offered to you. Prisoners don't eat until their captors are satisfied. "Tomorrow we'll be in Nassau," Mary says quietly, her voice barely audible over the soldiers' conversation. "Rogers will want to make an example of us. Public execution, probably. Big crowd, lots of speeches about the end of piracy." You nod, trying to accept the reality of your situation. In less than 24 hours, you'll likely be dead. All your struggles, all your desperate attempts to survive and escape have led to this moment, tied to a tree, waiting for dawn and the rope that follows. But as you sit in the darkness, listening to the jungle sounds that have become familiar over the past few days, eyes, something unexpected happens. The fear that's been consuming you begins to transform into something else. Not acceptance exactly, but a strange kind of peace. You've lived more in the past 2 years than most men experience in a lifetime. You've seen battles and storms, faced death a dozen times, and somehow kept going when everything seemed hopeless. The stars above look the same as they did from the deck of the Queen Anne's Revenge, the same constellations you used to navigate by. In a few hours, you'll never see them again. But right now, in this moment, you're still alive, still breathing, still human, and perhaps that's enough. Dawn breaks gray and overcast, matching your mood as the soldiers prepare for the march back to Nassau. Your hands have gone numb from the tight ropes, and your entire body aches from sleeping upright against the palm tree. Mary beside you looks haggard but defiant, her jaw set in the stubborn expression you've seen her wear before difficult battles. Captain Barnett approaches with 2 cups of water and a piece of hard bread for each of you. It's more kindness than you expected, and you wonder if he's done this many times before, feeding condemned prisoners their last meal in the jungle. Eat, he says simply. It's a long walk, and Rogers wants you alive. When we reach the harbor, the bread tastes like sawdust, but you force it down. The water is warm and has a metallic tang, but it's the first clean liquid you've had in days. As you eat, you notice some of the younger soldiers watching you with curious expressions. To them, you're probably a figure from stories, a real pirate like the characters in the adventure tales they grew up hearing. If only they knew the reality. The constant hunger, the fear, the way violence became so commonplace, it felt normal. The friends you've watched die from disease, battle wounds, and simple accidents. The way desperation can turn men into monsters, and how quickly honor disappears when survival is at stake. The march begins in single file, with you and Mary in the center of the column, surrounded by armed guards. Your legs are weak from days of poor nutrition and stress, but you manage to keep the pace. The jungle that seemed so threatening before now feels almost protective. These might be your last hours under the green canopy, breathing air that doesn't smell of death and gunpowder. As you walk, your mind drifts to the other members of Blackbeard's crew. Some escaped when the ship fled Nassau, but others weren't so lucky. You wonder how many are already dead, hanged in other ports, or killed resisting capture. The thought should sadden you, but instead you feel oddly detached, as if you're observing someone else's life from a distance. About midday, the sound of the ocean grows audible through the trees. The familiar crash of waves against shore brings a complex mix of emotions, relief at hearing something from your old life, but also dread at what awaits you in Nassau. You've heard the stories of Rogers' executions, public spectacles designed to terrify other pirates into surrender or retreat. When the jungle finally gives way to open beach, you see Nassau Harbor spread before you like a painting of your former life. But everything has changed. Where once dozens of pirate vessels anchored in defiant clusters, now only Royal Navy ships occupy the water. The Jolly Roger flags have been replaced by Union Jacks, and the chaotic energy of the pirate republic has been replaced by military order. The town itself looks different too. The taverns and brothels that gave Nassau its wild character are either closed or converted to legitimate businesses. Streets that once echoed with drunken singing and the clash of swords now see orderly patrols of Marines. It's as if someone took your world and painted over it with respectability. A crowd has gathered at the harbor to see the captured pirates brought in, but their faces don't show the bloodthirsty excitement you expected. Instead, you see curiosity mixed with something that might be pity. These are mostly ordinary colonists, shopkeepers, farmers, fishermen, people who never chose the outlaw life but understand desperation. Rogers himself waits at the dock, flanked by his staff officers. He's smaller than you imagined, with intelligent eyes and the bearing of a man comfortable with authority. When he sees you and Mary, he nods once to Barnett, a simple acknowledgement of a job completed. The famous Mary Read, he says, as you're brought before him, and Edward Morrison, late of Blackbeard's crew. He knows your real name, which shouldn't surprise you, but does. You'll be tried tomorrow morning. I suggest you use tonight to make peace with God. The jail is a stone building that reeks of human waste and despair. Your cell is barely large enough to lie down in, with a single barred window that looks out onto the execution dock. Mary is somewhere else in the building. You can hear her voice occasionally, speaking to other prisoners or guards. As night falls, you're surprised by a visitor. A young chaplain, nervous but determined, comes to offer last rites and spiritual comfort. You're not particularly religious, but but something about his earnest desire to help moves you to conversation. Were you really a pirate? He asks, curiosity overcoming propriety. For 2 years, you reply, though it wasn't like the stories make it sound. What was it like then? You consider how to answer. How do you explain the complexity of a life lived outside normal society, the strange bonds formed with desperate men, the moments of genuine camaraderie mixed with constant betrayal, the way freedom and imprisonment could exist simultaneously? Mostly it was hungry, you finally say, and scared, but also alive in a way I'd never been before. The chaplain nods, as if he understands, though you doubt he really can. How could someone who's lived a safe, conventional life grasp what it means to wake up each day uncertain whether you'll see another sunset? Your trial the next morning is swift and predictable. Evidence is presented of your participation in attacks on merchant vessels. Witnesses testify to seeing you aboard Blackbeard's ship. You're given a chance to speak in your defense, but what is there to say? You did what they accuse you of, driven by circumstances they couldn't imagine. The verdict is death by hanging, to be carried out immediately. As you're led to the scaffold, you catch sight of Mary being brought out for her own execution. She nods at you once, a final acknowledgement between comrades who shared an impossible journey. Standing on the platform with the rope around your neck, you look out at the crowd gathered to watch you die. Some cheer, some look away, others simply stare with a morbid fascination. You wonder what they see when they look at you. A villain getting deserved punishment, or just another man who made desperate choices in desperate times. But as the executioner adjusts the noose, you realize something unexpected. You're not afraid anymore. The fear that drove you to piracy, that kept you running through jungles and fighting battles you couldn't win, has finally left you. Whatever comes next, it can't be worse than the uncertainty you've lived with for so long. Your last thought, as the trapdoor opens beneath your feet, is of the stars you used to navigate by. Constant and reliable, they'll still be there long after your story ends, guiding other lost souls across dark waters toward whatever fate awaits them. In the years that follow, the golden age of piracy will officially end. Men like Rogers will succeed in driving the last outlaws from the Caribbean, replacing chaos with commerce and law. Ships will sail safely between ports, their cargoes protected by naval escorts and international treaties. But sometimes, on quiet nights when the wind is right, sailors will still tell stories of the men and women who once lived free on these waters. The tales will grow in the telling, becoming legends of adventure and romance that bear little resemblance to the brutal reality you knew. And perhaps that's as it should be. The truth of your life, the hunger, the fear, the desperate struggle for survival, belongs to history. The legend belongs to dreamers who need to believe that somewhere, somehow, it's possible to live completely free, even if only for a moment, even if the price is everything. The Caribbean waters continue their eternal dance with the shore, indifferent to human struggles. The sun rises and sets on the same horizon you once watched from rolling decks, and somewhere in the endless blue, the ghost of your younger self still sails on, forever chasing that impossible dream of perfect freedom on the open sea.